Now, what's really interesting is from a socio-political perspective, and this Stephanie Kuntz really brings this out in her book, because equality and women being equal with men was such a threat to the patriarchal society. It was believed that a woman, in many cases throughout history, even enjoyed sex, much less be on top, or asserted any kind of equality, whether it was religious equality, political equality, or equality in the home, that would threaten the family and thus threaten the children. Hi, I'm Aaron Tomlinson, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, this short video, I want to talk to you about Lilith and Lilith Rising. So who is Lilith? Is that somebody next door that I know or something like that? No, when I'm talking about Lilith, I'm talking about something that's embedded in Hebrew tradition. Not really talked about in the Bible, but definitely a story, a myth that evolved and developed throughout Judaism. Now, one of the things that we need to understand about Second Temple Judaism, or first century culture and reality, is that it was really pretty misogynistic. Women were considered property. In the Bible, adultery is considered more of a property crime than a sexual crime, because you took your neighbor's wife, you took your neighbor's property, which is why in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not covet, the wives are listed along with houses and lands and stuff like that. And so both in Hellenistic culture, whether you were Jewish or whether you were Greek, women were not held in very high esteem. And in some respects, they were despised, and in some respects, they were even feared. Now, of course, there were exceptions to that. People who try to come up with apologetics that the Bible is not misogynistic or sexist, they're cherry-picking things from the culture. Of course, there's always exceptions, but we don't want to look at the exception and make it the rule, right? And so that's kind of what happens sometimes in scholarship and theology with some of these apologetics. But so who was Lilith? Lilith was considered to be Adam's first wife, someone who precedes Eve, right? And so God gives Adam, the first man, this wife named Lilith. And Lilith doesn't cooperate very well because she decides that in the sex act that she wants to be on top, that she should be on top. And she begins to assert her rights to equality, to being equal with the man. Now, this is something that has threatened patriarchal culture in every patriarchal culture throughout history. Stephanie Kuntz has a great book called A Marriage, a History, that talks about this in really in-depth and well-documented details, going back even to the Greco-Roman period and Second Temple Judaism. And so women asserting their rights, both sexually, even for sexual pleasure, and definitely for equality, has always been a threat and something that people feared. And so in the story, Lilith is saying, I'm going to be on top this time, and I'm going to be equal with you. And it culminates in her using the name of God. Now, in Judaism, women were not allowed to study the Torah. There's writings of rabbis from the ancient periods that say it's better to burn the Torah than to give it to a woman to read. And so you can see how threatening this story would be, how impactful this story and myth would be. And so the way the myth proceeds is that she proclaims the name of God, says the name of God, and for that reason, then she gets banished from the garden. And then later she becomes this sort of twisted, evil night demon who goes and steals children in the womb. And so there was all kinds of magical spells and talismans and things that were used throughout Judaic history to protect women when they were pregnant from Lilith coming and stealing their babies. Now, what's really interesting is from a socio-political perspective, and this Stephanie Kuntz really brings this out in her book, because equality and women being equal with men was such a threat to the patriarchal society, it was believed that a woman, in many cases throughout history, even enjoyed sex, much less be on top, or asserted any kind of equality, whether it was religious equality, political equality, or equality in the home, that would threaten the family and thus threaten the children. So this is a fear that has been in patriarchal societies throughout history, and this fear morphs into this myth of Lilith. But now let's look at today, and let's talk about Lilith as an archetype. Let's look at her as an archetype of the outsider, the one who is oppressed or suppressed by the society and the culture, the one who is the outsider, the one who really just wants equality, who really just wants to have the freedom, if you will, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? To pursue her own things and be considered equal, have equal standing, but then is exiled by the people in power, is pushed away by the people in power, and then is vilified and made to be evil by the group and the community and the people in power. And so what if then Lilith can become a powerful archetype, a powerful archetypal energy that is on the rise today, where the voice of equality is being heard, where the voice of the outsider is being included in the group, where the person who doesn't conform to everything that the group thinks or doesn't conform to everything that society thinks and has been rejected and has been a projection of the group has been put on them, that they are evil and that they are demonic. But what if Lilith needs to be restored to the garden? What if Lilith needs to be restored to her rightful place and redeemed and given back and given the opportunities to do the things mythically that she wanted to express? This can relate on so many different levels. It can relate to the parts of ourselves that we alienate, the traumatized parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that we don't like, the parts of ourselves that the group doesn't like, and that we suppress in the darkness and that we make evil about ourselves. When we explore those things, when we heal those things, when we harmonize those things with the rest of our being, when we integrate those things, that's an example of Lilith rising. When people are crying out for equality, whether it be women, whether it be other ethnicities that have not been given seats at the table, whether it be the LGBTQ group, whatever the case may be, that can be an example of Lilith rising. And I think it could be a lesson for us that we need to be careful and realize that sometimes when we vilify these groups and we vilify these people and we vilify these voices, that really what we're doing is we're just projecting our own fears that they're going to come and somehow steal a future from us, a la come and take our children from us. But all of that is a psychological projection. We're fighting with ourselves, really. We're fighting with our own psychological projections. And so I want to invite you to explore this a little bit. If you want to explore this topic more with me, let me know in the comments. But look at ways that you might be able to take your projections back and realize that there isn't always an evil other out there just because they're not like you. And that perhaps we're living in a day and age where Lilith is crying out for equality, where Lilith is crying out in the name of God, and where Lilith is rising to bring harmony and equality both within our own beings and within our society. So just something for you to consider. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and you like this content, please consider subscribing and liking and maybe even sharing the video. If you want to join our private Facebook group, the link is in my bio. It's a New Day Global Facebook group. We'd love to have you there. Thank you for joining me for this video, and I will see you again next time.